You're so annoying. Get out of my house.
Stop clinging to me, you useless good-for-nothing. Mine. Go away. Don't show up in front of me.
This is what you deserve for kicking me out of the house.
The sea breeze hit the glass window, as if to warn of something about to break. On David Lawson's phone screen, the latest message from his daughter appeared, short and cold. Dad, don't make it difficult for me. Ocean Light Villa is Ethan and I's home. You should find a place that suits your age. He sat motionless on an old wooden chair, his coffee cold. Outside, the sunset dyed the Santa Barbara coastline, a deep crimson red. Across the street, a motorcade of luxury cars pulled up to the mansion. His daughter, Ava, a social media star with more than 500,000 followers, was celebrating her engagement to Ethan Caldwell, heir to the prestigious Caldwell estates. On Instagram, Ava had just posted a photo, standing in front of the mansion, wearing a diamond ring. It's time for the new generation to take over. In the comments, thousands cheered the future heiress. No one knew that the man packing his luggage upstairs was the real owner of that house. David opened the old wooden chest and took out a worn suitcase. He folded each shirt carefully, as if burying a past. Every object bore Ava's trace: the photograph of her at the beach at age 8, the seashell she'd found and promised to keep forever. They were all left on the shelf. Party music drifted in from the backyard, bass, giggles, the clink of wine glasses. Amid the noise, Ava entered the room, her perfume overpowering the sea breeze. "Dad, Ethan and I talked about it," she said, her voice wrapped in polite firmness. "You should move into a smaller apartment. We need this space to build our future." David turned to look at her. There was no anger, only a calm light, the kind that's more frightening than rage. "You said yours, Ava. Have you ever wondered who pays the bills? Who fixes the roof when the storm comes?" Ava shrugged, smiling slightly. "Dad, I don't want to fight. Ethan and I can manage the property. You just need to rest." "Where?" "Somewhere smaller, more modest. Ethan's friends can help you find something that fits your budget." The word affordable cut through the air like a knife. David's hand tightened on the suitcase handle. His eyes shimmered, but he said nothing. He walked down the stairs in silence. Below, the guests raised their glasses, their laughter echoing like distant thunder. Ava returned to the party, her fiancé's arm around her. Ethan leaned down and whispered, "I told you. You need to be tough. It's time your dad retired." Ava nodded, her smile as thin as a knife. As for David, he stood outside watching the lights dance across the water. That flicker reminded him of the night 20 years ago, when he held his little girl, promising her a life without fear. Now that same child was pushing him out of the house he'd built with hands cracked by cement. He opened his phone and scrolled down her post. Comments flooded in. "So admirable. The Malibu princess is about to be a millionaire. Wealth is in the genes." Then one comment stopped him. "Just take it. Old people don't need a beach villa." His chest ached, as if every vein was being squeezed. It was dark when he left. He packed his suitcase, walked out, and turned back one last time. Ava's bedroom light still shone brightly, like a stage where she played the lead role. He understood now. Those words weren't just about kicking out her father. They were a declaration that money could buy, even origin. David didn't scream, didn't beg. He only whispered, barely audible to the wind. I have claimed something I never earned. He closed the trunk of the old pickup truck. The clang of metal echoed, like a full stop at the end of a long sentence. But in his eyes, there was no defeat. Only a cold, quiet light, like a newly sharpened knife. Driving out of Santa Barbara, he stopped by the beach. The city lights shimmered on the water like falling stars. He looked at his reflection and whispered hoarsely, I thought I won, but I forgot. You were the one who taught me how to build a sandcastle and how to make it disappear. A strong wind blew, carrying the salty smell of the sea and the ashes of something about to burn. David started the car. The headlights cut through the darkness like avenging swords. That night, Santa Barbara did not sleep. In the mansion filled with laughter, no one realized that somewhere out at sea, a real storm had just begun to form. That night, the lights in Santa Barbara were still on, but David Lawson's room down the block was dark, save for the cold blue glow of his computer screen on his face. The day before, his daughter had kicked him out of the house. Tonight, he was back at his old desk, the place where the first blueprints for Blue Horizon Properties had been born. The clock on the wall ticked regularly, as if measuring the heartbeat of a man who had just woken up from a 20-year slumber. David opened the safe beneath the desk and inserted the key. The sound, click, echoed dryly in the empty space. Inside, instead of money or ledgers, were thick, leather-bound file boxes with an embossed seal, Blue Horizon Properties, LLC. He placed each file on the table, brushed off the dust, and turned on the desk lamp. The light revealed signatures, bank seals, ownership certificates, 200 coastal properties accumulated over 27 years. All of it, under a company he had built in silence, under the guise of an anonymous investment fund. David looked at the numbers, but there was no pride in his eyes, only the quiet ache of a man who had given everything, only to hear his daughter say, "It's time for the new generation to take over." He pulled an old photograph from the drawer. Ava, 8 years old, sitting on the beach, her tiny hands building a sandcastle. Next to her, a young father, smiling, proud. David gently touched her face in the photo and whispered, "Back then, I taught you how to build, but you never learned that sand can melt in a single wave." Now he would teach that lesson again, not with words, but with power. David closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and said softly, as if under oath, "If you want to learn about power, I will teach you in its language." The clock read 2:14 a.m. He opened his phone book and pressed the first number. A calm female voice answered, "Rachel Kim." "Rachel, I need you to prepare a transfer file, and I need it ready before sunrise." "Sounds serious, David. What are you trying to do?" "No revenge. I just want to restore order." Rachel paused for a moment. Then she said quietly, "I understand. I'll be in the office soon." The second call, to Jonathan Meyer, Vice President of Blue Horizon. "Jonathan, wake up the finance team. We're activating Horizon Dawn." Jonathan's voice sharpened. "I thought you were waiting until next month to close the deal." "There's no next month, Jonathan. Everything changes tonight." Security level? Highest. No one but me, Rachel, and you. He hung up. His breathing was steady, his eyes fixed in the darkness. The last call to Dr. Samuel Lee, the family therapist who once helped him and Ava. Samuel, I need a meeting tomorrow morning, not for healing, but for recognition. Recognition. I want every word I say and every action I take from now on to be witnessed, because she'll need a witness when the truth comes out. Samuel sighed softly. You're still the father who thinks before the wounds. David chuckled. I just don't want people to call me crazy when it all starts. He set down the phone, stood up, and walked to the window. The moonlight painted silver streaks across the sea. A distant train whistle echoed, mingling with the sound of the waves. He remembered Ava's voice as a child. Daddy, are the waves ever afraid of the sea? And he had replied, no, because the waves are how the sea proves it's still alive. Tonight, he was no different. A father who seemed drowned was about to rise. David returned to his desk, logged into the company system, and began typing. Numbers filled the screen. Assets, accounts, shares. He deleted some names, added others. Each click was a move, each number change, a warning. The clock turned to 3:00 a.m. He closed the safe, locked it twice, and stood in the dim light. Before leaving, he placed the photo of Ava at the center of the table. Daughter, I still have this smile, but tomorrow morning, you'll learn something else. The power to make your world fall apart, and then rebuild. The door closed behind him. His figure melted into the dark. Outside, the sun was still sleeping, but in his heart, dawn had begun. Because every father has his limits, and when love is trampled too deeply, it turns into justice. If you were David that night, knowing your child had betrayed you, but you had the power to change everything, would you choose to stay silent or to take action? A. Forgive and wait for your child to repent. B. Respond so your child can learn the real lesson. C. Disappear, time with 300 somu, and let the world teach her for you. That night, just as David Lawson had predicted, the first wave began to roll in. Inside the Caldwell mansion in San Diego, chandeliers blazed like captured suns. The marble floor shimmered under the weight of sequins, designer heels, and money. Jazz floated through the air, slow, seductive but hollow, like a lie told too many times. Crystal flutes clinked, photographers shouted. The guests, investors, politicians, heirs, all smiled with the sharp precision full of people who had learned how to weaponize charm. And in the corner, almost invisible among the glittering crowd, stood David Lawson, a gray suit, a $16 bottle of wine in his hand. He looked like a misplaced note in a symphony of wealth. And yet, the moment he stepped into that hall, the air subtly shifted, as if something ancient and cold had just entered. Patricia Caldwell, Ethan's mother, spotted him first. Her diamonds sparkled cruelly under the light as she approached, smiling like someone about to perform a kindness that would hurt. Mr. Lawson, she said sweetly, her voice lined with steel. It's touching that you still try to keep face at such important occasions. David turned, meeting her eyes with a calmness that cut through the noise. Thank you, he said simply. I still believe dignity doesn't come from the wine rack. Her smile stiffened. a tiny fracture, quickly masked. The surrounding guests exchanged polite laughter, pretending not to sense the tension crawling under the silk and champagne. Then Ava appeared. Descending the staircase, her gown shimmered like liquid silver. 1,000 camera flashes crowned her in artificial glory. The Malibu princess, the new Caldwell bride. But when she reached her father, her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Dad," she whispered sharply. "Please, not tonight. Don't say anything that will make people uncomfortable. Let this night pass quietly." David tilted his head. "Quietly," he repeated. "That's a beautiful word." Then lower, so only she could hear. "But are you sure what you're standing on is stable enough to stay quiet?" Ava frowned. That same expression she had as a child when she didn't understand her father's metaphors. But this time, she didn't ask for an explanation. She turned away and rejoined the party, arm in arm with Ethan. The evening unfolded in elegance and deceit. Laughter, applause, and toasts filled the hall. Ethan raised his glass, speaking proudly about our future home, Ocean Light Villa. The crowd clapped, unaware that the man who built that villa with his bare hands stood only a few feet away, holding a plastic cup instead of crystal. A group of young businessmen whispered and smirked. One of them, tall, smug, called out, "Mr. Lawson, you must be proud, huh? From that old beach house to this. Your daughter's marrying into royalty." David turned his cup slowly, the reflection of the chandelier flickering across the cheap plastic. "Proud?" he echoed. "Maybe, but it's too early to tell." "Why?" the man sneered. "Worried you can't afford the taxes on that $3 million villa anymore?" David looked up, and for the first time his eyes glinted, cold, deliberate. "Tell me," he said quietly, "who do you think paid those taxes for the last 15 years? Laughter broke out, nervous, forced. One woman muttered, "He's joking." Ava turned sharply, her face pale. "Dad, don't embarrass yourself." David placed his cup down carefully, each motion deliberate, as though marking time. "No, Ava, I'm not degrading myself. I'm degrading your illusion." The laughter died. Even the pianist's hands slowed. Ethan stepped forward, his jaw tightening. "We're celebrating, Mr. Lawson. There's no need to be theatrical." David looked at him, then at the crowd, and smiled. "Do you know what I've realized tonight?" he said softly. "Everyone here talks about inheritance, about who gets to rule next. But not one of you ever asked where your foundation comes from." His tone was calm, not angry, not loud, and that made it terrifying, because calm was the sound of control. He set the glass down. "My daughter once asked me what real power was. Tomorrow," he whispered, "she'll know, in the language of power itself." Then he turned and walked away. For a few seconds, no one moved. The chandeliers still shone. The band still played, but the laughter had died somewhere in the back of the room. Ava stood frozen, her pulse pounding, unable to explain the sudden chill in her chest. Her father's gray suit disappeared into the shadows of the exit, but his words stayed, heavy as thunder before rain. That night, the rich of San Diego raised their glasses to a fairy tale marriage. None of them knew they had just toasted the beginning of a war. Because when a man stays silent too long, every word he speaks becomes a warning. And when that man is a father, his silence is not surrender. It's strategy. If you were Ava that night, seeing your father standing alone, smiling that strange, quiet smile, would you think it was A. The smile of a fallen man. B. The smile of a man with a plan. C. Or the smile of a storm about to swallow your world whole. The banquet hall was still filled with laughter, but Ava knew something had changed since her father left the table. From a distance, David Lawson returned, holding a black leather briefcase. The light reflected off its surface, making it look like evidence from a trial about to begin. No one noticed until he stood in the center of the hall, where the chandelier shone directly down. His voice wasn't loud, but it echoed clearly through every corner of the room. Sorry to interrupt everyone's fun, but there's something I think should be made clear. Right here. Ethan smiled politely and raised his glass. Mr. Lawson, this is an engagement party, not a press conference. David nodded slightly. Yes, and I don't intend to hold a press conference either. I just want to clarify. Ownership. The room fell silent. Even the soft notes of the piano seemed to freeze mid-air. Ava could feel every gaze turning toward her father. She whispered, her voice trembling, "Dad, please don't." David didn't hear, or perhaps he chose not to. He placed the briefcase on the table, unlocked it, and pulled out a thick, heavy file. Then, from his pocket, he took out his phone and turned on the speaker. On the other end, a woman's voice came through, calm, steady, and sharp as steel. "Rachel Kim, hello, David." David spoke slowly, clearly. "Rachel, if a living person is claimed by another person to inherit their property, what is that, legally speaking?" Rachel's answer cut through the noise like a knife. "It depends on the circumstances, but if there is intent to take or coerce, it can be considered fraud and forced transfer of property." The sound of forks and glasses stopped mid-air. The air was suddenly thick. Patricia Caldwell frowned. "I think your family matters don't need to be brought up in the middle of our party." David turned, his smile gone. "Mrs. Caldwell, actually, this isn't just about family. It's also directly related to the buildings you're renting." He opened the file. Pages fluttered under the chandelier light. Contracts, stamped papers, deeds, and one printed article from Forbes. The headline glowed in black and white. "The West Coast's Invisible Man. The mysterious entrepreneur behind Blue Horizon Properties. A $92 million empire." Ethan laughed nervously, trying to keep his composure. "It must be a joke. Blue Horizon is the group behind hundreds of hotels." "It can't be," David interrupted, his tone razor sharp. "It can't be me?" He lifted his phone, projecting the company's login screen onto the wall. The audience could see it clearly. CEO, David Lawson. Then, his voice turned cold, like waves striking stone. "You used to stay in my hotels, work in my buildings, negotiate contracts in my offices, and then laugh at me when I drove my old pickup truck to your parties." Murmurs spread through the hall. Faces changed color. Some guests stared at the floor, remembering the leases, the contracts, realizing whose name had signed their checks. Ava stood frozen, her hands clenched until her knuckles turned white. She looked at her father, barely breathing. "Dad, is this real?" David looked straight into her eyes. "It's more real than anything you've ever posted online." Ethan tried to recover. "If that's true, then why didn't you ever say anything? What were you hiding from everyone?" David's reply was calm, too calm. Because I don't need to prove anything, Ethan. But today, you forced me to remind you who has the right to kick whom out of the house. A glass fell. Shards scattered across the marble floor, rolling like silver coins in the silence. Patricia Caldwell tried to smile, her voice trembling. Mr. Lawson, you must be mistaken. We only thought that Ava— David interrupted again, his tone steady as judgment. Ava thought that Ocean Light Villa was hers, but it's just one of over 200 properties I own, and I can sell it with one phone call. The room tilted, as if gravity itself had shifted. Ava stepped back, tears shimmering under the chandelier. Dad, why would you do this in front of everyone? David looked at her, his eyes gentle but unyielding. Because you chose to humiliate me in front of 500,000 strangers. I only gave you the same thing in return, the light of truth. No one spoke. Ethan set his glass down slowly. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, he's the real Blue Horizon." David closed the file. Enough. I just want the people in this room to know. When you say I'm not qualified to live in my own house, you're standing on the ground I built. He turned, walking out of the hall. Each step echoed against the marble, like the ticking of a clock announcing another storm on its way. Ava watched her father's back disappear through the doorway. Her chest tightened with panic. Under the dazzling light of the chandeliers, she finally understood. True power is not loud. It is calm, precise, and it only needs a few pieces of paper to expose every lie. If you were David in that moment, standing before those who mocked, despised, and betrayed you, which way would you choose to turn the tables? Chanson. Walk away silently, letting them collapse on their own. B. Tell the whole truth right there, even if it hurts someone. C. Keep a part of the secret, so you have one last move. As the doors of the Caldwell ballroom closed behind David, the world of power was still reeling with whispers. But he didn't turn around. Because he knew the party was only the prelude. The real game was just beginning, while the city slept. 5:00 a.m. The first light of dawn filtered through the curtains of an office on the 27th floor, reflecting off the glass walls. Rachel Kim stood at the conference table, her coffee cup trembling slightly. In front of her, a stack of contracts 3 inches thick, the ink of the notary seals barely dry. Are you sure, David? David Lawson stood by the window, eyes fixed on the sleeping city below. Absolutely. Every line, every word was written by me. I didn't lose anything today. I just cleaned up what was smeared. Rachel sat down, signed the last page, and hit send. Her voice calm but trembling slightly. 5:07 a.m. File has been sent to the trading desk. Harper Group accepts all your terms. 100% payment within 12 hours. No negotiation. No delay. David nodded slowly. Good. Send a copy to Jonathan. Request confirmation before sunrise. Outside, Santa Barbara was waking up, but on the top floors of Blue Horizon, an empire was quietly falling. 6:42 a.m. Rachel's phone buzzed. An encrypted message appeared. Harper Group, transaction complete. $15,400,000 transferred. Ownership of Ocean Light Villa and Oceanfront Apartment officially belongs to Harper Group. Rachel looked up, stunned. That's it. The 2 properties have changed hands. David chuckled, pouring more coffee. his tone calm, almost gentle. So, I finally fulfilled my daughter's dream. Rachel frowned. A dream? David smiled faintly. She wanted to take control of the beach house. Now she'll know what it feels like to lose control, even faster. He typed a message on his phone. Short, cold, precise. You want the house? I just sold it, and the one you thought was yours. 3 minutes later, the screen lit up again. What are you talking about? I don't understand. David took a slow sip of coffee. You'll understand when Harper's people come to change the locks. 700 a.m. Outside the window, the sunrise painted the city in red. While Ava still slept in her penthouse across town, the legal gavel fell. The transfer contract was sealed, handed to the notary at City Hall. Harper Group, the Caldwell's sworn enemy, now owned the 2 prime properties that Ethan's family had coveted for 10 years. In San Diego, Ethan woke up to a phone ringing. 3 urgent messages from his father, the president of Caldwell Estates. Harper just bought Oceanlight Villa. Check. They also own Oceanfront Apartment. Who's behind this? It can't be David Lawson. Ethan reread the messages again and again, a chill spreading through his chest. Meanwhile, at the Blue Horizon office, David quietly saved a copy of the file, then signed his name under the words, Transfer completed, 7:03 a.m. Rachel stepped back into the room. Don't you regret it? David looked out toward the ocean, his voice steady as stone. Regret is for the weak. As for me, I just protected the last lesson for my child. Never underestimate the value of silence. Across town, Ava woke to the sound of the doorbell. A Harper Group employee stood there, holding an envelope and a notice. This apartment has been moved. You have 60 days to leave. Ava froze. Her hands shook as she read her father's text again and again. Tears welled up. She dialed his number, but the line didn't connect. Only a cold, mechanical voice replied, The caller is currently busy. Please leave a message. And in that silence, Ava finally understood. His silence was the answer. Across the water, David sat in his usual coffee shop. The sea breeze brushed through his silver hair. He placed the cup down, watching the sunrise glow on the horizon like molten gold. It was done. No shouting, no argument. Just a few lines. And a signature. And the arrogant had paid their price. The waiter approached. Would you like anything else, Mr. Lawson? David smiled faintly. No. Just time. To enjoy the silence. It's been a long time since I've heard the sound of justice. He closed his eyes. The steady rhythm of the waves echoed like a lullaby. Somewhere, Ava was crying. Somewhere, Ethan was panicking. And David just smiled. Because this dawn wasn't just the beginning of a new day. It was the beginning of justice. If you were in David's shoes, betrayed by your own blood, would you be calm enough to retaliate with a signature instead of rage? A. Remain silent. Let your actions speak. B. Call your child. Tell them everything. C. Keep it secret till the end. Let them discover who truly won. Because sometimes, silence is the loudest sound of all. As the sun rose over Santa Barbara, before the ocean waves could even crash onto the shore, another wave hit social media, and it took Ava Lawson's name with it. Within just a few hours, entertainment outlets, financial pages, And even major newspapers shared the same headline: Santa Barbara's hidden mogul sells everything after family betrayal. David Lawson's image appeared everywhere: a simple gray suit, steady eyes, a contract in hand. Next to it, Ava in a silver dress at the engagement party, smiling, eyes bright with pride. Two photos side by side, a cruel contrast. Father, humble, real. Daughter, glamorous, fake. Ava woke to the buzzing of her phone. 30 missed calls, hundreds of messages, thousands of tags. She opened Instagram. Her followers had dropped from 624,000 to 421, and falling fast. The comments came instantly. Her father sold her house. Father of the Year, teaching her with true justice. The Malibu princess turned out to be a luxury tenant. Ava threw her phone on the bed, hands trembling. She opened her laptop, desperate to delete the story. But it was no use. The truth, or at least what the internet believed, had already spread like wildfire on the ocean breeze. At the same time in San Diego, Ethan Caldwell held a brief press conference. When asked about the engagement, he forced a thin smile. "We are temporarily separated to avoid the media noise. Ava needs time to settle down." A reporter asked, "Do you confirm the rumors that her father sold 2 properties to Harper Group?" Ethan smiled again, but the smile cracked. Business is business. Emotions are secondary. The press understood immediately. Caldwell was cutting her loose. The brands didn't wait either. Emails flooded her inbox. "We regret to announce that we have terminated our partnership with Ms. Lawson, effective immediately." Ping. Then another, and another. One by one, every company that once paid tens of thousands for her posts backed away. That night, Ava went live. No makeup, no filters. Just a pale face, red eyes, and the sound of her breath shaking between sobs. "My dad pretended to be poor. He made me a laughingstock. I didn't know anything." Her voice broke. But the internet was merciless. The comments hit like knives. "No one asked you to be greedy. He's not pretending to be poor. You're pretending to be rich. This is the price of arrogance." Within 3 hours, the live stream reached 8 million views. The hashtag #OceanLightDaughter topped TikTok and Twitter. Thousands of remixes, memes, and mock videos flooded every feed. She became a symbol and a warning. They called her the Bubble Princess, the lost heiress, the one who pushed herself out to sea. For the first time, Ava truly understood what it meant to be alone. No lover, no brand, no money, no home, only silence, and the cold light of the screen reflecting her own tears. She called her father, but only an operator answered. "The number you have dialed is currently unavailable." She texted, "Dad, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?" No response. Outside her window, Santa Barbara glowed under the nightlights, and somewhere by the ocean, David Lawson was probably still drinking his morning coffee, calm as if the storm had never happened. Ava collapsed onto the floor. Everything she knew, the car, the contract, the lover, the glory, had turned to dust in a single day. She wept, not knowing if it was for the loss or for the realization that she had never truly owned anything at all. Dawn broke again, cold light glimmering on her mascara-stained face. And in the darkest corner of her life, Ava began to see her own shadow. If you were Ava, and the whole world was applauding your fall, what would you do? Run away so no one would see your weakness. B. Stand up and face the storm you created. C. Find the only person who stayed silent because he loved you. Sometimes the cruelest sound in the world is not hatred. It's silence. From the one who once called you my child. After the social media storm, everything seemed to be over. But in truth, it was just the beginning of another journey. A journey without flashbulbs, without millions of followers. Just a girl, learning to be a normal person. 3 weeks later, Santa Barbara entered its breezy season. The same streets where Ava Lawson once appeared in commercials were now the roads she pedaled through each morning, on her way to work. No supercars, no stylists, no designer dresses. Just a brown cafe uniform and a cap embroidered with the words, Seaside Brew Cafe. Ava stood behind the counter, hands trembling slightly as she frothed the milk. Across the counter, 2 young women whispered, just loud enough for her to hear, "Oh my gosh, is that Ava Lawson? She did a St. Dior commercial." "Yeah, make us some coffee now. The world has turned upside down." Ava bowed her head. She didn't respond, only said softly, 2 cappuccinos, no sugar. The words were gentle, but within them, a sky full of pride she was slowly peeling away, layer by layer. At noon, when the shop was quiet, Ava pulled a folded paper from her pocket. The handwriting was uneven, the ink smudged with sweat. "Dad, I'm not asking for my money back. I'm asking for my dignity back. I want to know what it feels like to earn my first dollar without relying on anyone. If I can do it, I hope you'll listen to me. Ava." The note was never sent, but every time she read it, she could breathe a little easier. As the afternoon wore on, the shop grew crowded. Some customers recognized her and asked for pictures. Others quietly left tips with notes that said, "Thank you," for daring to face her. She didn't know if they wrote it out of pity or sincerity, but she still bowed her head and whispered, "Thank you. Have a nice day." That night, Ava returned to her small rented apartment in her old neighborhood, a place her old friend Megan Torres had found for her. Megan, the girl she once called uncool, was now the only person who welcomed her with open arms. "You don't need anyone's pity," Ava said. Megan smiled. "Good. I don't have money to feel sorry for anyone, but I have a place to sleep, and I can cook noodles that don't burn." So they lived together, one who had everything and one who had nothing. Megan taught her the smallest things: how to wash clothes by hand, how to calculate the electricity bill, how to boil an egg without it exploding, and how to say thank you without needing it, just because she meant it. At night, Ava opened her notebook and wrote, "Day 15, no tears yet, just missing Dad a little. Day 16, spilled coffee, got yelled at by a customer, didn't react. Day 17, got my first paycheck. $126, not much, but mine." Each page folded with quiet pride, something she had never known in nearly 30 years of living off others. One night, Megan asked softly, "If your dad walked into the shop tomorrow, what would you do?" Ava stared at her reflection in the glass fogged by coffee steam. No makeup, no filters, just her true self. "I wouldn't apologize," she said. "I'd say thank you, because he let me fall so hard that I wasn't afraid to fall anymore. Santa Barbara was quiet that night. In the cafe, the only sound was the coffee machine's hum and Ava's pen writing in her diary. Day 18. Beginning to understand that you don't need many followers to be valuable. You only need one, and that is yourself. Each line, a step back to her true self. The more she wrote, the more Ava realized everything she had lost was, in fact, the very thing saving her from her false self. If you lost everything, reputation, money, love, but had a chance to learn how to be human again, what would you choose? A. Continue chasing the old halo. B. Start over, even with just a cup of coffee. C. Go back and face the one who taught you the biggest lesson of your life. 30 days after the night Ava Lawson wrote, Day 18, Relearning to Live, in her notebook, Santa Barbara had grown quiet again. The noise, the hashtags, the storm of opinions, all faded into the background. People had moved on. But for Ava, the silence that followed wasn't shame. It was peace, the kind that only comes when the storm inside has finally settled. That morning, the sea breeze was colder than usual. David Lawson sat alone on the pier, an old jacket around his shoulders, a cup of hot coffee in his hands. He looked out toward the silver surface of the ocean. He hadn't called Ava in a month. He hadn't avoided her either. He had simply waited, like someone who knew the tide would turn when it was time. Soft footsteps approached behind him. A gentle voice followed. "Dad?" David turned. There she was, hair tied back, Target jeans, cream sweater. No lipstick, no stage lights. She looked like the same girl he once took to the beach years ago. Only this time, there was a quiet strength in her eyes. She held out a small coffee carton. "Dad, this is for you." David chuckled softly. "Are you paying this time?" Ava smiled. "Yes. I work the morning shift now." They sat down together, shoulder to shoulder. Neither spoke. The waves murmured beneath the pier, and seagulls cried somewhere far away. Two people, watching the horizon, as if trying to see the lost years returning with the tide. "This coffee's good," David said at last. Ava nodded. "I made it myself. Not bad for someone who once didn't know how to turn on an espresso machine." David smiled. "I learn fast," she added. He replied, "We all do, when we're hungry enough to learn." They both laughed. A real laugh. Light, unforced, healing. For the first time in years, there was no longer father and daughter. Just two people, understanding each other at last. David's voice softened. "You know, sometimes the most valuable lessons come from our own mistakes." Ava looked toward the sea. "I think I understand now why you didn't get angry. Times hundredtums." "Anger," he said slowly, "only teaches fear. But silence makes people look at themselves." Ava nodded, whispering, "And it hurts more." "Yes," he said gently, "but it's also more real." The sun began to rise higher, its light spilling across the ocean's skin. It reached Ava's face, warm, golden, forgiving. "Dad," she whispered, "I used to think losing my home was the end, but losing myself, that was the real bottom. Thank you for letting me hit it." David smiled faintly, his hand resting on her shoulder, light as the breeze. No one learns to be human without falling, Ava. She looked at him, eyes glassy but calm. But you hurt me. He nodded. You made me see my worth. She continued softly. That was enough. They sat together as the wind carried away the years of hurt, two souls breathing again. Under the pier, waves touched wood, steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat returning to peace. David's voice broke the silence. There are lessons that can only be paid for with tears, in exchange for self-respect. And there are gifts, not houses, not fame, but the chance to regain yourself. Ava looked up at the sun. The light hit her eyes, and she squinted through tears. Dad, she said quietly, I've never seen such a beautiful sunrise. David smiled. Because this is the first time. I've seen it with my own eyes. In that moment, there were no longer roles to play. No father and daughter, no traitor, no wounded soul. Just two people, washed clean by a storm called truth. The story ends not with forgiveness, but with silence. The warmest kind of silence the world can give. If you were Ava, and the person who hurt you opened his arms again, what would you do? A. Bow your head and apologize for everything. B. Hug that person, even without saying a word. C. Stay silent and let love speak for itself.